All right, Hardin County, we're back. I moved inside because there's a little staticky noise outside. And I don't want you guys to have to listen to that, and I don't want to edit it out. So we're just going to do this inside. And I wanted to let you know I made it to my first Fairboard meeting, the one on August 7th, and it was a long one. Before the fair, of course, it's going to be long, but it's the only one I've been able to get to so far. I'm sure I will be to plenty more of them. Um, and I'm not going to report on all the things that they went through. It was definitely a 2 hour meeting. They had a lot going on, a lot came down from their executive committee, things they had to get passed. We all know about the money from John Cross, the 500,000 that come from um, the state. So they um, talked about that. They talked all about all kinds of things, but I want to touch base with things that kind of relate to the commissioner's office and things that I've seen come through the commissioner's office or relate to them. There's a few things in here, and I just want to pass it on because it's what I'm getting to do, right? So we're finding out what's going on at the commissioner's office and, digging in. So there's a um, vacancy from Washington Township. So the Fair Board, you're going to have the president, who's Brad Murphy, Jake McFadden, vice president, Judy Cronley, secretary treasury. You guys probably all know these things. And then you have one, two, three, four, five at larges, and then one representative from each township is on here. And so the Washington Township guy, he was Craig Stump, I believe, put in his resignation. It was kind of interesting. They talked about his resignation, and it wasn't official, and so they wanted to appoint somebody to his job. So he had certain jobs like the grandstand and camping and those kinds of things, and they couldn't do that until they got his resignation. They got it while we were in the meeting. They read it. And the interesting thing about that is, you remember when the executive committee of the Fair Board came in and they talked all about the alcohol sales and they wanted to approve that for um, the concert. So they've sold a bunch of tickets for this concert that's coming up. I forget who it is. And they wanted to do alcohol sales, right? And they talked about having fencing and having it quarantine and how you were going to manage that and keep everything, secured. And so they kind of went back. Then we got a note back in the commissioner's office that they um, they did not do it. They did not go through with alcohol sales. They cited like administrative concerns, issues, right? So they had a special meeting that was part of these meeting notes that were approved, and it basically talks about how they didn't do their due diligence, I guess, or they just didn't think through that process of um, that you can only, well, let me look, you can only make amendments to the Constitution and bylaws at their annual meeting in November, right? So that's the only time. And so they can't change anything until November, which of course is back, too far for the fair. And so administratively, they just can't make this happen. Now, are they going to talk about it in November and try to amend those bylaws then? Possibly, possibly. So Craig had written in his resignation that, he felt like they had lost sight of the fair being for the kids and that the alcohol sales for the concerts were, I get kind of like a no-go for him. He said that there was a lot of alcohol issues happening out in the campgrounds area that was never being addressed, and that was a problem. And so it was kind of like the whole, how that whole alcohol thing came across for him was enough, and he resigned his position. And so we're sad to see him go. And if you're interested in getting involved in voicing your opinion about the alcohol sales at the fair, you got to do that now, right? So the meeting's going to be in November. You can't wait till November. The decisions are already going to be made. So, take this information and start doing your research, you can always call or message me, ask questions. If I don't know, I'll try and find out. So I'm just saying, you can't wait till the end of something and then complain that you didn't know. Like, this is your information to get involved. So anyway, so that's a township issue. And so through the commissioners, they would have to get, I assume, it's kind of interesting. The commissioners would have to approve because they own the county fair, to have the alcohol on, on premises type of thing. So we'll have to just see how this all plays out, if it comes back in November and if it doesn't. So let's see. The other thing that was interesting, I'm going to take you a picture. So the executive meet the board. Okay, they want to build this new building at the Fairgrounds, right? It's part of why the $500,000 from John Cross is coming down. And from what all I know, which I don't follow it very closely, is they want to replace the animal barns there with a big long barn. Now, talking to some other guys, they mentioned that the big long barn complex, which if it's animal stalls, I'm not sure how much that would work. But having a big long complex at the fairgrounds will allow them to have like trappers associations come in, gun shows come in, national events can come in, because everything's all under one roof. So it's like, if you get in, you get a ticket, you can go anywhere in that building, and you got vendors all over the place, right? So like I said, with them being animal barns, maybe that wouldn't be a great thing, but it would sure be nice for our fair to have year-round activities instead of kind of just a once-a-year event. It could be bringing in a lot of revenue. And so that's something, to kind of keep an eye on, is, how much is the fair really feeding its own funds, type of thing, if it's being underutilized. Anyways, so from what I understand, I don't participate in the fair animals. Evidently there's flooding issues that goes on. I know the engineer's office put in a retention pond, but evidently there's still water up by the house that's pooling, and it's not getting where it needs to go. And I forget what they called the map, but they went around and showed it to everybody, and it basically shows the lowest spot at the fairgrounds is where those the cow barn and the pig barn and the sheep's barn, all those barns is like in the lowest spot, and so you're getting flooding there, and it's an issue. And then the highest spot is over where the kids zone is. They have the behind the machinery building, they have like the woodworkers and the little exhibit people, like the magic shows and stuff, go there. That's kind of like on a hill, so that's the best place that they're going to do to build. So it's kind of, you got your midways. I made a picture. I don't know if you can, it's terrible. So you kind of have your midways here, the machinery building, right? So this whole section is they're proposing to put in 3 buildings and then having offices over here, right? And then something about putting animal wash stations here, but that's not going to work because of the sewers and whatever. And they don't have any plans for like what goes in these buildings. You're basically just getting blank slates that these are kind of the building blueprints, okay? And the reason, it was kind of a really rushed thing. I've never been to any of their other meetings, so I don't have any idea what came before this discussion. But Brad was saying that after the fair, they want to break ground for drainage. Then they need to know where these 4 corners of all these buildings are going to be, because they're going to put in catch basins and they're going to put in drainage and all those things. The week after the fair, they're going to break ground so that then you can get one of these buildings up and running for the fair next year. So it seems very rushed, since this is not even a plan that I've ever seen as a citizen. And I do see their stuff on Facebook, as it comes across. Um, and then over here, so pork producers is here. The animal barns are over here. They get to keep the bathroom. The other thing that's dictating this is you have um, sewer lines and hydrant lines. I forget. There's like three different lines that are running through here that they don't want to mess with, and so it kind of puts them in a circle here. Um, I haven't asked any questions about so the animals are coming here. Are these buildings going to be demolished? The 500,000 from John Cross is supposed to be going to these buildings, to help with the building of it. So, anyways, news to me, maybe news to you, and so here's the really crazy thing, and is that they were kind of discussing where this money was going to come from. So it's $90,000 to do the drainage for these buildings, right? To put in the things and to drain it all out. I don't know how extensive it is. I know they talked about getting the the water from the house over to that retention pond. I don't know if that's part of the 90,000 or it's really just the buildings section there. So they were kind of back and forth, and I thought, oh, it's not going to get voted on. And then all of a sudden, Roger Crow, commissioner, obviously, he had mentioned earlier in the meeting that he wanted to meet with Brad and maybe the executive session or executive committee, early on. So he said that early on. And so they wanted to vote on this. It didn't kind of look to me like it was going very well. And so Crow speaks up and he says, hey, I don't want to put a wrench in things, but the commissioner, I'm not sure how he said it. The commissioners, I think is how he said it, we're going to pay for the drainage, so the $90,000 for the drainage from infrastructure funds. And so, of course, everybody's cheering and they say, why not? And so they voted on it and it passed. So, it looks, at least from my standpoint, that, once you put drainage in the week after the fair, which is a month from now, you're going to be tied in to this building schematic, because you already spent $100,000 to do the drainage. So, anyways, so Roger says he's going to, get the 90,000 from the infrastructure fund. I have not checked. I don't know if we actually have an infrastructure fund, but what I think that he meant is they're going to use it for the ARPA money, the COVID money, kind of these millions of dollars that we've had for several years now. And I'm going to do a video on that once we dig in a little bit more into that ARPA money, where it all went. A lot of it's gone to the courthouse. I know they divvied up some of it to different villages and municipalities, done lots of different things with it, but they're coming down. So in the meeting on Thursday, I don't know if you can hear, because Fred talks, he kind of whispers sometimes in the meetings, so you can't hear him. But he was going over, I think it was like probably 40 minutes in, the Garmin Miller roof project is coming out of ARPA funds. So they got the final bid for that. So they're going to put that, he has a spreadsheet. So he's going to put that in the spreadsheet. And there was some question and back and forth on whether it was in there correctly. And so they're going to do a reconciliation of that account, because they're coming right down to the end of what they've already allocated out to different people. And so they want, they're coming down to the dollars and cents. And so I don't know if the drainage has already been in there, if they're using the last of the money to pay for these building drainage systems. I'm not sure. But generally, I think of infrastructure, I think of water, sewer, and storm drains, that are going to kind of benefit, the greater community and not just the fairgrounds, which, hey, you got to have drainage for your new buildings. I'm just saying, maybe there's some other places that we could use that money. The health department has been in numerous times asking for additional ARPA money to try and take care of the severe financial problems that they're having right now. The TB case that we just talked about, They were asking for $12,000, which I feel like is tiny amount of money that to cover the salaries and the time and the gas and mileage and all that kind of stuff to take care of that TB patient. And that's not being taken care of, but we can take care of the fairgrounds. The funny thing that I think is that, there are people coming in and begging. I mean, you think about Forest and McGuffey in those areas, $100,000 to fixing their sewer is infrastructure. Now, those are municipalities and not purely county, but it does affect county people. So, um, so the interesting thing I think is that there's people who've been in, really asking for money and having some real hardships. And yet, when I was in that meeting, the Fairboard did not ask for this money. They did not say, hey, commissioners, can we have this money? Really, it was just Roger kind of offering it up and saying that they were already going to pay for it. And so, I don't know. I'm not part of I haven't been up there very long. Maybe there's been discussions that I've not been involved in, which I'm sure there are. But as far as the public meetings have gone, I haven't heard anything these last months that I've been there. And I don't know, how the commissioners relate to the Fair Board and, the hierarchy of them, it being a county thing. So that's all something that I have to kind of figure out and we'll dig into at some point in time. But definitely interesting, especially when I know we have so many other needs in the community that are, I feel are pretty severe. So anyway, so that's kind of the end for, check out their agenda at the Fairboard. It's online. Always a lot of stuff happening. They've got name changes, all kinds of stuff. And so they're moving and shaking down there at the fair. But we will leave it at that and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.